This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, we'll continue from where we left yesterday on EC2. Okay, on EC2, as I told you, it is virtual machine. Okay, virtual servers in the cloud. If you want to have your own variety of CPU, memory, and storage combination, we generally go for elastic cloud compute, EC2 instances. So we call it as instances in AWS. Okay, so instances are nothing but virtual machine or virtual servers in AWS. And we talked about how to choose a particular instance type. For example, if you are looking for a small to medium web or application server, we generally go for general purpose. Similarly, when we go for some network appliances, terminal server, we'll go for compute optimized and the other respective instance type. Okay, and we also talked about key pair. When we go and log into any AWS instance, we generally get authenticated using private key and public key. And private key is something which we download, and public key will be getting stored in AWS platform. So without this key, you will not be able to log into the AWS console or the EC2 instances. So now let's get a little bit deeper into the EC2 on how to do little more things on the EC2 instance. So when you create a EC2 instance, either it is Linux or Windows, you will get a public IP. Public IP is accessible from the internet, and you'll get a private IP which is accessible just within the AWS environment to be accessed from internet. And similarly, private IP is accessible via AWS and any VPN private network. Okay, now let's log into this particular EC2. Okay, I'll copy the public IP address and I'll take RDP. Okay, once after I take RDP, you can go and verify what are the different disk configuration network settings on this machine. So if I go to disk management, I could see it has got only one OS drive with 30 GB capacity. I'll also look into the network configuration. Okay, it has got only one network. Suppose if I have a requirement to add more disk to have data or application loaded into that, I can just go and add additional disk, additional network card. So let's see how we can do that quickly. So if I go to the instance here, if I go to the actions, okay, you have to select the respective instance first, and then you have to go to the actions. And here you have option to go and check the instance settings to check what is the current situation, what is the instance type, and so on. Here you can attach network interface and add network interface, modify the IP address. First, we'll go and attach a external disk. Okay, so if you scroll down in AWS, Elastic Block Store is the block storage for the EC2 instances. So EBS stands for Elastic Block Store. So it is the block storage for AWS EC2 instances. So why they call it as block storage? So in general, okay, there are different type of storage that are available, like object storage, block storage, file storage, and others. But block storage is something which you have to format in the OS. You have to format using the native OS file system. If you are using Windows, you will format it using NTFS or the native resilient file system, REFS, and so on. If it is Linux, you might be using ext4 or XFS and other file system. So you have to format the partition or disk before usage. So you have to create it into a block and then consume it. So now here, okay, so all the EC2 instances that we have, okay, are hosted on a virtual platform. As I told you yesterday, it's all hosted on a virtualization platform on an hypervisor. In AWS, we have multiple hypervisor option. In general, they are using Nitro or Zen or other hypervisors. Okay, so Zen or Nitro, or even you have the option to load it in VMware. Okay, so here in general, like there are a lot of unused disk in the local hard disk, local server. So in the server itself, there are a lot of disk. We might have seen there are internal option within the server where you can have a lot of disk capacity. So these disks are accessible only when the virtual machine is running on the same hardware. But if the VM has to move to another hardware, or if the VM has to move to another data center, the disk access to this particular hardware will be lost. So in AWS, we have two options. So if you want to have the data stored, the first option is the instant store. Instant store is the local storage on the server hardware. So this is not a permanent storage, because like if the VM gets migrated, or if the VM gets moved to another hardware or another location, the access to that local storage will not be available. So in general, the machines that are running on the hypervisor, they will have access to a common storage, okay, which is external to the server. Okay, so this storage is nothing but your elastic block storage. Okay, so this is accessible from all the hardware. Even if your VM moves to another server hardware or another location, you will be still having access to the external storage. So the internal storage is called as instant store, and the external storage is called elastic block store. So generally, it is a best practice to store your data in the external storage, which is the elastic block store, EBS. Okay, so this is permanent storage. The first one is the temporary storage. So for example, like people might have a doubt why we need to have two type of storage. In certain cases, for example, if you want to store some image or some content which is not really needed long term, you can use this particular capacity and store the data here. So that if any image you want to store, like there are like OS images which might be 2 GB, 3 GB space, you need not waste that particular capacity in the external storage. Instead, you can store it in the local storage. You can also configure caching. You can also configure temporary space in this particular local storage, so that you can use both the local storage as well as the external storage. So anything that is temporary in nature, anything that you need to store in temporary basis, you can use the local storage. Anything that you want to store in permanent, like your application data or your company's information, you have to store it in the external storage so that you can retain it for longer time. So the instant store is also known as ephemeral storage. So ephemeral is nothing but temporary. Permanent storage is the long-term storage. So anything that is like caching or temp files. There is echo, right? 1 second. Okay. So anything that is temporary or you need it for caching, you can use the local instance store. So anything that is permanent, you have to use the elastic block store. So elastic block store is the recommended option to store all your important data or files or information or anything DB and so on. Okay, so now let's go and create a EBS volume and then see how you can attach those EBS volume. In AWS, they call the partition or the disk as volume. So you have to go and create a volume here. Okay, currently you can see there is an 8 GB volume which is attached to the EC2 Linux EC2 instance, and you can also see where exactly it is attached to. You can see the name of the server here. Okay, Amazon Linux Web Server 1, and the next server is Windows Web Server 1. So this particular volume is attached to the Windows Web Server. So we can create additional volume here. So when you go and create additional volume, there are a lot of different options. Okay, so general purpose, provisioned IOPS, cold, throughput, magnetic. So I'll explain one by one on what exactly their use cases are. Okay, general purpose, and then we have provisioned IOPS. In provisioned IOPS, we have two generation, IO1, IO2. Okay, and we have cold HDD and throughput optimized HDD. And then the last one is the magnetic option, okay, which is standard, magnetic standard. See, in general, if you talk about the hard disk technology or the storage technology, there are two categories. One is the hard disk technology, which is the older technology, which used to be like having a spindle plater, and it used to be the older technology. Now everything has been changed to the flash technology, which we call it a solid state drive. So we used to have hard disk drive, which is older technology, traditional technology, and currently we have the solid state drive, which is your flash drive, or people call it as flash drives and starch. So here this is called as magnetic drive because it used to have a spindle plater and so on. So generally, if you want to have some kind of basic performance or standard performance, you can go for HDD. But if your workload, if your application needs premium performance or better performance, then you need to choose SSD option. So how I can relate this here? So general purpose, it is coming under SSD category. Provisioned IOPS, it comes under SSD category. The remaining three are coming under HDD category. So your application is needing better performance, you should always go and suggest the first three option, which is SSD technology backed drives. Okay, so the bottom ones are HDD options. So in general, in any cloud, you have these two options. So you always should go for SSD if you are looking for better performance or premium performance for your application and data. Okay, so now, so let's go and create a particular general purpose SSD. Okay, I'll create a general purpose SSD. I can give a capacity here. See, there are a lot of differences on how you have to learn this. For example, if you go for general purpose, the capacity minimum starts with 1 GB and you can go up to 16 terabyte, right? So you have the minimum to maximum here. Similarly, if I go for cold category, you can see that the minimum capacity is 125 GB. So if your customer is asking for cold storage, so what is cold storage? If they want to store something for longer duration with less price, you can go for the cold storage option. Okay, so okay, so if I go for throughput optimized HDD, you can see again it is demanding 125 GB. So if you are working with a customer, then you need to be very clear. So if you are suggesting for throughput optimized or cold storage, the minimum capacity is 125 GB byte. Okay, it is not 1 GB. You cannot start with 1 GB. So the pricing will start from 125 GB. Whether you use it or not use it, the pricing will start from 125 GB. So here in the cloud, maybe I'm not sure how many of you have seen this. So here we are not writing MB, GB, KB and all. So it is GIB, MIB, KIB. So it is different from your traditional storage. In general, we used to have kilobyte, megabyte, gigabyte, terabyte, and so on, right? So this is the way of calculating things in decimal. Okay, but then in the cloud, we are not dealing with storage allocation, or we are not dealing with allocating the storage capacity. Instead, the system or the orchestration tool, it goes and allocates the capacity. So for machines, for computers, allocating the storage using binary format is better. So in general, all the cloud technology, they will allocate the storage in the binary format. See, instead of kilobyte, they use kibibyte. Instead of megabyte, they use mebibyte. Similarly, they have this GB and TB. Okay, so we call this as kilobyte and we call it as megabyte and so on. Similarly, this is called as kibibyte instead of kilobyte. So the last two characters in between, it will be replaced by binary to denote it is it is calculated in binary format. Similarly, this is maybe byte. Okay, and GB byte and TB byte and so on. So how much is the difference? See, when the size is very smaller, there won't be much difference. So kilobyte is 1000, then megabyte is 1000 square, and so on. So, but then if the capacity is very huge, there will be a considerable difference. So this is 1024, and this is 1024 square, this is 1024 cube, and it increases. So if the capacity is increasing at a larger level, you will see a major difference. But initially there is a small 24 byte difference, so you will not see the difference when the size is very smaller. But if the size is huge, then there is a considerable number of difference. So in cloud, the calculations are done using binary, not decimal. Okay, so that's the reason you see GIB, KIB, MIB, and so on. It's not like regular on-premises way of calculation. If human beings are calculating it, you will go and ask for capacity. I need 1 GB, I need 10 GB, I need 100 GB of capacity. But in the cloud, machine is calculating things, so it is always calculated in binary. Okay, so now if you look at the other option, magnetic. See, magnetic is the traditional old technology. So in those days, we did not have a lot of capacity. That's the reason you can see it provides only up to 1 TB or 1 TIB. Okay, so you can see that for the magnetic category, you get a very small size. This is the maximum that is supported. See, when the workload is very normal, and if you want to have a standard performance, then you can go for HDD. So when the performance needed is premium, then you can go for SSD option. Okay, now I'll just go and create a general purpose SSD, and then I'll just give capacity as 2 GB, or let me create 4 GB for now. Okay, and this is important. Okay, so when you go and create a disk drive, the disk drive has to be in the same data center as that of the virtual machine. If your virtual machine is in different data center or different availability zone, you cannot attach it to them. See, for example, my web server is currently in US East 1D data center. So AWS, they are actually scattered into multiple regions, right? They are present in multiple region, and in each region they have multiple availability zones. Availability zones are nothing but physical data centers. So here in this particular console, whatever you are seeing here, right? 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. So these are all separate data centers. So example, US East is one region. Similarly, US West is another region, and India is another region. Similarly, like you have multiple regions. Okay, so data centers, you'll have US East 1A, 1B, 1C. There might be up to 6 data centers in US East. So you here the VM has got created in US East 1D. So when you want to create a disk or network card, you have to create it in the same data center, same availability zone. Otherwise, you will not be able to attach it. So I have to select the 1D data center here. Only then I'll be able to attach the disk or the network card. So you have 6 data centers in the US East locations. So here I have to select US East 1D. And if I already have taken a snapshot of an existing volume, I can go and select that existing volume and create the new disk using that volume. Or else what I can do, I can just go and create a new disk, new empty disk. Okay, so I'll say don't create volume from a snapshot. It will go and create an empty disk now. Okay, I'll create the volume. So this is how you generally go and create a EBS volume. Okay, now the volume is created, and when the volume is created, if you move to the right, you can see the status here. So the creating status should have to turn as available. Once after it is available, you can go and get them attached. Okay, now it is available in blue color. So it is not in use. It is not attached to any system. If it is attached, then it will say in use. Okay, so currently it is available. Now I can go and select this, go to actions, and I can either attach this volume, or I can go to the instances and I can attach it. So here I'll say I'll attach the volume. So here it will ask which instance you want to attach it. So there are 2 instances. One is Linux instance and another one is the Windows Web Server instance. So I'm going to attach it to the Windows Web Server instance, and you can give different drive letters. So you can give X, V, D, F, G, H, I, J up to P for your data volume. So you can give a specific device name to identify which volume you are attached, or if you want to identify, this is the unique ID that it allocates. So it starts with XVDF, GH, and you can give up to P for your data volume. So I'm just giving F, okay, and I'm going to attach this volume now. So once after I attach this volume, on the right, you can see it is currently in use now. Okay, now if I go to the system again, so it will, you can see that it is showing that 4 GB unallocated volume in the server. So you can, if it is not seen there, you can go and refresh or rescan the disk. So you will also see that new volume which I have attached. So you don't have to bring down the server, you don't have to restart the server in order to attach the volume. So it can be done online. So you can just go and bring it online. Okay, and I can just create the new volume now. I have to initialize the disk. See, when your disk capacity is more than 2 terabyte, you can go and select the GUID partition table. If your disk size is less than 2 terabyte, you can go for the master boot record. There are two type of partitioning style. So the second one is mainly for huge capacity. So this is mainly for smaller capacity. If your capacity is less than 2 terabyte, you can go for master boot record. Okay, now the capacity is unallocated. I can create a new volume and I can label it as, see, I can allocate the full volume now, or I can just allocate only 2 GB and then allocate the remaining 2 GB later also. You can do that. And here I can just say data volume and then I can create it. See, I've got the 2 GB formatted. If I want to extend it later, I can also extend it. So how to extend it? Just right click on the volume. I can just say extend volume and I can increase the capacity by additional 1 GB or additional 2 GB, and you can also increase it. Okay, now I have increased it to 3 GB instead of 2 GB. So you can increase the remaining space whenever you want. This also can be done online. So if you want to manage it from the command prompt, there are different commands to manage it. There is a command called disk partition. Using this command, you can go and do the partitioning. So you can go and extend it. You can go and um, make it online. So you can do it from command line also. You can do it in graphical way also. So this is how you go and attach additional disk, additional extend the size and so on. So if I want to extend this more, you can also go and select this volume here. Okay, and then go to actions and you can go to modify volume. And if I want more capacity, I can just say 5 GB and then I can click modify here on the AWS console also. So if it is saying if you are increasing the size of the volume, you must extend the file system to the new size of the volume. So it will take some time to optimize. So whenever you are doing this thing, even though it doesn't need downtime, it is always better to inform the application team that you are doing this change, because there might be some small performance impact to the business application. So you have to do it during the off business hours or the business hours when there is not much activity going on. So currently it is in use and AWS is trying to modify the current volume. So you should not go and do it during the peak business hours. There will be a small business impact or a small performance glitch. Okay. So now the volume is getting modified and you will start seeing this in some time. Currently it is showing 4 GB. So once after this is done, you'll see 100% completed. So it is still optimizing. So the optimization should have to get completed to 100%. Okay, you have to wait for that. So there are different states in volume state. Whenever there is a issue or whenever you are looking at some specific volume, you have to look into all these categories, especially the volume state. Okay, that will give you the clear indication what exactly is happening on your volume. And sometimes customer might say that they are not getting the enough performance on their application or on their data. So in such cases, currently the input output per second can be up to 100. Currently that is what we have given here. Okay, so you can also go and change that a little later. So currently there is a modification that is going on, right? So you cannot do multiple modification at the same time. So you have to do it one by one. It will impact actually. So let me show you this. So if I go to the other volume here, if I go to modify volume, I can also change the IOPS. Okay, currently in this option, I don't have the option to go and change the IOPS because I have selected the general purpose volume. Suppose if I want to convert it to another type, I can also do that. So I can just select this volume go to action, modify volume. I can also change the volume type to another category. For example, if customer is looking for SSD performance or higher performance, I can go and select the provisioned IOPS. So from the name itself, you can understand that you can provision the input output per second here in this category. In general purpose, Amazon defines how much performance it can give. For example, in general purpose, it is 1:3 ratio. For example, if you are giving 8 GB of capacity, you will get up to 100 GB. But in the baseline IOPS is per GB, you will get 3 input output per second. So that is the standard baseline performance you will get. You cannot get better than that. It is Amazon's best practice and standard. But if you are a customer, you want to define how much IOPS you want, you have to go for provision category. So in provision category, you can go and define as much as IOPS you want. See, up to 1000 IOPS per GB. But in general purpose, you will get only 3 IOPS per GB. So that is a huge difference. If your customer is looking for better performance or better IOPS for the application or the data, then you have to go and change the type of volume to provision IOPS, and you can provision the IOPS as much as need. So the pricing will definitely change. Okay, general purpose and provision IOPS pricing is different. So for provision IOPS, you can go and provision the IOPS on your own. Okay, you can also change the volume type anytime, and you can also change the IOPS as you want. Okay, so you have up to 1000 IOPS per GB, which means if you are giving 100 GB capacity, you can go up to 10,000 IOPS, or you can give maximum IOPS as much as possible. Okay, so this is very important when you're dealing with any performance issues or any customer is having any challenges in their application. So you can come and look at the configurations of your disk and how it looks like and so on. Okay, now let's go and check what has happened on the disk here. Okay, let's go and check whether the optimization is complete. So optimization is still going on. Let's refresh here. Okay, it's still going on. But the optimization state, the size will change here. But it is a good practice to wait for the optimization to complete before you make any changes. So that is the best practice recommendation, but the size will automatically change after you make the changes there. So optimization is for Amazon to make the balancing and add that additional capacity for better usage. So you can go and increase the capacity now. Okay, so now you can see the 5 GB here. You can go and do it, but as a good practice, wait until the optimization is complete here, so that there is no impact to your application or less impact. Okay, so let it run. Okay, the volume status is all okay, and as I told you, you can convert it, you can change it, and you can play around. So now let me do one thing. So if you want to shrink the volume, you can also shrink the volume here. You have also have the option to shrink the volume. So now let me go and browse the volume and explore it. I'll go and create a folder here. Okay, I'm creating a folder before the snapshot. Okay, I'm going to create one more folder now. Okay, data files. Okay, I'll create the data files here, and I'll create some files for folders inside that. Okay, I'll create a folder Ben, and then I'll say Benjamin and so on. Okay, let me close this. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a snapshot of this volume. So go to actions and I'll create a snapshot. So snapshot is what? Snapshot is a point in time backup. Suppose if you're planning to do some modification, or if you're planning to do some update, or if you're patching your system, then it is going to make some changes to your OS. It is going to make some changes to your operating system. Suppose that changes, if it is bringing some adverse impact, or if it is disturbing your application, there should be an option to go and roll back the settings, or roll back the actions that you have made, right? So that has to be done using the snapshots. Now snapshot is point in time backup. It is the incremental backup, incremental point in time backup. So it will capture, it is like taking a snap of your system. Okay, so like photograph, right? It's like at the point of time, what was the situation? So now I'll just go and create a snapshot and I can give it a name. So before changes, before I made some changes, either patching or upgrade or update, I'm creating the snapshot. Okay, now I can see that it has created the snapshot successfully from that particular volume. And I can also, if I can go and do a fast snapshot restore also, but I'll explain about this little later. So now I'm going and creating other files and folders now. After the snapshot has completed, I'm making some changes. Okay, maybe I'm just saying that I've created some application or I've just created something. App one. Okay, I've made some changes now. After taking the snapshot, I have taken an application. Second. So now I want to roll back that particular changes. How do we do that? So see, what I have to do is go to the snapshots here and I can see the snapshot option here and I can say select this and go and create a volume from the snapshot. You can also create an image from the snapshot. See, if you have a OS volume snapshot, you can also create an image from that OS volume snapshot and you can create one more VM exactly like how you had in that other VM, other instance. There are two options. You can just create a blank volume or you can go and create an image. So the difference is using the image, you can create one more EC2 instance completely new using the entire setup, including the operating system, application and everything. But if you're creating just the volume, this is mainly for the non-OS volume, like your data application and the secondary volumes. Okay. So now I'm going to create a volume here. Okay, I can also create with the same size, or also I can increase it. So this is again important. You have to select the same data center where your VM is created, where your VM is running. I'll create a snap volume now. So now I'm going to attach this volume which I've created to the same system. Okay, maybe if I want to roll back, I'll just better close all these things, or I'll just eject this. Okay, I'll delete this volume. Okay, let me go and unattach that. See, if you want to detach that volume, which I have made, which I have created already, I can go to actions. I can go and say detach volume. So this will detach the volume from that EC2 instance. Okay, now let's wait for that to happen. I can just go and see that. So that other volume, the old volume is now detached from the EC2 instance. Now I want to attach the new volume that I've created to that system. See, this time I'm going to select the same web server and I'm just selecting the same device name and attaching it. So this time I don't have to do any partitioning or I don't have to do any volume creation and nothing. So it is coming just like how it was in the snapshot. So if I go and browse it, I should not see anything, any changes that has been made after the snapshot. See, it has got the content only that was there before the snapshot was taken. So this is how you can roll back to the previous state. This is how you can roll back your system to the state before the snapshot. So whatever I've created after the snapshot, I have created two contents, right? I've created after snap folder and I also created one image file. So both of them are gone now. So this is how you can create a snapshot and roll back your system to the previous state. Okay, so let's close this. Okay, if you, I mean, whenever you have completed the lab or whenever you have unused resources, you have to go and clean them up. Okay, you have to go and delete the unwanted volumes permanently because that will unnecessarily cost you. See, when you talk about EC2, there are two charges. Okay, number one charge is for your compute. Okay, so in EC2, there are two type of charges. There is compute charge and there is storage charge. Okay, so storage charges. So compute charge, when your system is running, So it will consume the CPU, memory, and other resources, right? So you'll have to pay for the actual consumption of your CPU memory from AWS data center. But even if you power up the machine, you are still storing your data in AWS data center. Your volume is still stored in AWS data center. So irrespective of your machine status, you have to pay for your storage, right? So when the machine is powered on, you have to pay for compute storage. When the machine is powered on or powered off, irrespective of the status, you have to pay for storage capacity always. So always clean up the unwanted storage capacity when it is not needed, so that you can save a lot of cost there. So there are additional charges for your network. For example, if you want to have a dedicated permanent public IP, then you need to pay for that separately. So in AWS, they call it as elastic IP. Elastic IP is nothing but your static permanent public IP. So you can go and create a static public IP. See, when I go and restart the instance, or when I go and power up the instance, the public IP which I've got here, it will be released. It is not a permanent public IP. It is a temporary public IP. So whenever you want to have, see, for example, today your end user is accessing the application, they will be using a particular IP. Tomorrow, if the IP has changed, then they will not be able to access it. In such cases, you might want to have a permanent public IP for your machine. So how do we do that? If you scroll down, you have the option called elastic IPs here. You can go and allocate an elastic IP for your system. So again, it has to be created in the same data center or same region and allocated. So now I've created an elastic IP, but this is not attached to any system, or this is not attached to any network interface. So how I can do that? I can just go and say, this is for my AWS Linux VM. Okay, so in order to attach this elastic IP to the instance that is currently running, it should not have any existing elastic IP. So how I can do that? I just go to the elastic IP here, select the elastic IP, and go to and associate the elastic IP to that instance. So here, if I go and select that option, there are two options I'm getting. So I can attach the elastic IP to the instance completely, or if the instance is having multiple network interface, I can also attach it to a specific network interface also. So in some server, you will have more than one network interface. In such cases, you can attach it to specific network interface, or I can attach it to the specific instance also. So here I'm going to attach it to the instance, Amazon Linux 01, and I can choose which private IP it want to connect to, and I can select it, and it is giving me an option that allow this elastic IP to be reassociated. If I select this option, you can use this elastic IP for other machine association also. So now the elastic IP is getting attached. So if I go to the instance, earlier it is showing this IP now, right? So if I refresh it now, it should show the new IP. See, it has changed it to the new IP now. So this is how you can assign a permanent public IP for your EC2 instances. So when you restart the machine or when you stop the machine, this IP you have already purchased from AWS, this IP will never change. This is a permanent public IP. Okay, so this is how you can have a permanent public IP for your application or your EC2 instance. So how do I add additional interfaces, network interface to my system? So if I go to network interface here, currently I've got only two network interface, one for my AWS Linux machine and another one for my Windows machine. So if I want to create one more network interface, I can go and say create network interface. I can just say second NIC. Okay. So in some organization, they might want multiple network card for multiple traffic. So you might be taking backup to a different location. You might be accessing some data. So you might have to have more than one network interface. There might be multiple applications running on the same server. So some people will be accessing the application using one IP, and the other application will have to be accessed using other IP. So in such cases, you might need to have more than one network interface. So currently I've got only one interface. So let me show you how to add the second network. So I can select the data center again. You have to select the same data center 1D. So otherwise you will not be able to attach it. So I can select the default security group. Okay, I've attached the network means like I have created the network interface. I have not attached it to any machine. So that is the reason it is saying available. So it is not in use actually. So if I want to make it attached, go to actions. I can go and say attach here. Okay, so here it is saying no running or stopped instances in US East 1D. So which means the instances that are already running, you cannot attach the elastic interface. So for adding this, there is no downtime needed. But if you're adding network card or if you're adding network interface, you have to inform the business that there is a downtime needed. You have to bring down your server, only then you will be able to attach it. So you have to get downtime from the customer. You have to get the downtime from the business owner. So I have to go and power off the VM now. Okay, I'll stop the instance. See, there are two options. If I stop the instance, it will be temporarily stopped actually. But then if you go and terminate it, termination is deleting the instance. It will go and delete the instance completely. So terminating means you are completely terminating the instance contract with AWS. So this particular instance will be deleted from AWS console. So be clear, if you're doing termination, you're deleting it. Hibernation means you are putting your laptop in hibernate mode, right? Like a sleep mode kind of. So you can also do a hibernation in EC2 instance also. So rebooting is just rebooting your server, restarting your server. Okay, so now I've stopped the instance. Now it is available. So if I go to the interface again, this time I should be able to, I can just give it a refresh always. Go to and select the option, attach option, and let's see. Okay, this is the interface, sorry. Attach, and okay, it is saying no running instances in US. Okay, so this is checking for instances in this particular VPC. Let's see where exactly that system is currently running. Okay, 22D6. Okay, let's see. So my machine is currently in which subnet? Okay, currently it is in this VPC, default VPC. Let's see. Oh, okay. So there are other VPCs also in this particular location. Okay, so my VM has got created in this particular VPC. So if I want to create the network interface card in this VPC, then I have to go and carefully create that. So let me go to network interface again. So when I go and create a network interface, this time I have to be very careful. So I have to select the VPC. Okay, US East 1A, 1C, 1D. Okay, let me check the VM here. Interfaces. Okay, my VMs has got created in this particular subnet. Okay, then I have to select this subnet only. Let me click that. Okay, so this is the subnet I have to choose. Okay. So it is still showing. Oh, okay. So I see this time I made a mistake. I've selected US East 1B. Okay, so my VM is in 1D. Okay, I should not have created it in 1B. So let's see if there is an option to go and change that. So there is no option to change the data center. So you have to be very careful when you create it. Okay, let's do one thing. So this VM is in default VPC. Okay. Okay, so the VM is in the subnet. Okay, I'll select the same subnet. See, now I can see the option. So I can go and choose the AWS Linux or Windows Web Server. I can choose the Windows Web Server, and now I can attach the network interface. So once after I attach it, you can see that it has successfully attached the network interface to that particular volume. Now I can just go to the instance and power it on again, start the instance. And after I start the instance, I should see both the network interface card on the server now. Okay, let's give it a minute. Okay, now you can see that there are two IP address for that system now because it has got two network interfaces. So now I have to scroll down and I have to get the details. Okay, it is still initializing. Okay, I think it should have completed by now. Okay, it's still initializing. Okay, let it take some time. Okay, while this is happening, I'll also explain few more options here. See, when I go to the instances, you are seeing a lot of other options here: savings plan, spot request, reserved instance, dedicated instance, scheduled instance, capacity reservation, and so on. So these are all purchasing option, especially for the sales team or the people who are working on pre-sales. They need to understand what are the different option, how they can save money in while they're creating the EC2 instances in the cloud. Okay, we'll discuss that option. We'll see what are the different options involved. So when you go and create a EC2 instance by default, it gets created as a on-demand instance. So that means you have to pay for the instance based on your consumption. So this is pay as you go model. Okay, the default model is pay as you go model, but then if you know that your instance is going to run for a longer duration, then you can go and choose the savings plan. So savings plan, there are two options: compute savings plan and EC2 savings plan. Okay, so EC2 savings plan, if you purchase the savings plan for EC2, you can only create EC2 instances. But if you're going for compute savings plan, you can create all compute category systems like your Lambda, your Elastic containers, EC2, and all those category. So compute savings plan is for all the compute related services, but EC2 savings plan is only for your EC2 instances alone. So why we need to have the savings plan? If you know that you are going to have a longer commitment, then you can go for this particular savings plan. So if you want to have the EC2 instances running for consistent amount of usage, then go for savings plan. It will give you a lot of cost saving. Similarly, we have reserved instances. So in reserved instances, there are two options. Okay, fixed reserved instance and convertible reserved instance. So fixed reserved instance, they call it a standard RI or reserved instances. So RI stands for reserved instance. Okay, standard RI, you will go for commitment. I want to run this VM for 1 year. I want to run this server for 3 years, and you will just say for commitment. You will say that I need to run this VM for 1 year, 3 year term. So you will get 40 to 50% cost saving when you are going for reservation instances or reserved instances. So convertible instance, only advantage is that you can convert the term whenever you want. You want to change the term from 3 year to 1 year, or if you want to change the term, you can change it in the convertible RI. But fixed RI, standard RI, you will get a better benefit, but you cannot convert the plan later. So when you go for this particular plan, see if you have a EC2 instance that you know it will run for 1 year, 3 year, or if you're planning to run it for 5 years, then you can go for this RI option so that you will get a better cost benefit. See if I go to RI here, you can go and purchase the RI here. Go and purchase the reserve instance, and you can say how much term you want to use it for. Whether I want to run it for 1 year or whether I want to run it for 3 years, I can go and select it, and I can select the specific instance time that I'm going to run. So this way you can go and save a lot of cost. And the additional advantage is that you also have an option to go and make payment in a different way. You can do it in a no upfront, or you can go and pay some small amount upfront so that you will get a lot of cost saving there. Okay, so this is again mainly for saving a lot of cost. Okay, next option is scheduled instance. See, for example, if you know that you are going to come up with some big billion sales, or if you are going to have some higher need for instances during the weekend or financial month end or whatever, so you know that there is a schedule that is going to demand more compute resources or more capacity from your business application. So in such cases, you can go and say that to Amazon that I might need some 20 instance or 100 instance during this particular month end or a particular workload type or particular duration or particular day of a, so during a particular duration or a day or month or whatever, you can go and say I need to schedule these instances so that Amazon will be prepared and they can give you it for very less cost. Okay, so next option is spot instance. Spot instance is bidding option. See, Amazon has got huge data center, and not all their servers are completely used. There are a lot of unused capacity in their data center. So what they generally do is, in order to make money out of that unused capacity, okay, they will come for bidding. Like in the bidding, you can go and say, I want to see. You might have gone to the market, right? In market, there will be bidding happening. So they will say they'll start with some minimum amount, and you can go and say that I can just give this much amount of money for this particular thing. You can bid for the instance and then you can get it. So you can get up to 80% cost saving in spot instances. But most of the spot instances, they are not much recommended for production, because whenever there is an increase in cost or whenever there is a high demand in the data center, Amazon will go and remove those spot instance category. Spot instances are very cheaper, but it is also having higher risk actually. So next one is dedicated option. You can also go and purchase dedicated host, dedicated instance. So dedicated host is completely buying the entire server hardware. There might be cases where you have to go and apply some licenses on the hardware, or you might have to completely purchase the entire hardware. You can go for dedicated host or dedicated hardware. In some cases, you might have to also go for a dedicated instance. This is mainly to have only the instance alone dedicated for your customer. So there might be some compliance requirement or some legal requirement where you cannot run the VM or run the instance along with another competitor or another customer. So in such cases, you have to go for dedicated option. So that option also it is there in your option here. So dedicated host is mainly for any specific legal or licensing and all those requirement, but you need to go and dedicate that. I mean, this is very useful when it comes to legal or compliance requirement. So you have these many different options. Okay, so you can go and purchase any of these options for your EC2 instance. Let's go and check what happened to my EC2 instance. So now 2 by 2 checks are passed. Now let me log in. So now I can see that there are two private IP address. So now Amazon doesn't know which interface they need to attach the private public IP. So that is the reason there is no public IP here. So what I can do is I can just go and use that elastic IP which I have used here, and I can just say go to actions, and I can release this particular IP address which I associated to the Linux instance. So here, now I'll go to the actions again. I'll go to associate, and I'll associate to the instance that is Windows web server. I can also choose one of the public IP. Okay, associate it. Multiple interface attached. Please specify the interface. Okay, I'll just select the interface ID here. Okay, let me go and check which interface I want to attach. Okay, there are two interfaces. So this is the ENI. I can attach it to the primary interface. I can copy the ENI ID, Elastic Network Interface ID, and I can just paste it here. Okay, and I can select it. Okay. So now I am attaching it to the specific Elastic Network Interface on that EC2. So ENI stands for Elastic Network Interface on that particular VM. So why they call it as elastic network interface? You can attach it, detach it, like elasticity is there. Okay, you can attach it, detach it anytime. That is why they call it as elastic IP, elastic network interface. Whenever there you see the term elastic, which means you can easily get them attached, detached as you want. So now let's go and log into this instance to see whether I'm seeing the public IP now. Okay, I'm able to see it. Now I can just go and connect it. Okay, now I can go to the network properties. So I can see there are two network interface here. Okay, AWS Para Virtual Network Interface 0 and Network Interface 1. Okay, so you have to just try and practice these things, create volume, create snapshot, create network interface, and then try to do all these things. And then we can start discussing on little more advanced things like AMI. We can also discuss about networking shortly. Okay, so now let me do one thing. Let us go and let's try and answer a few questions here just to summarize. Okay, so I want to have an EC2 instance that I want to run it for a fixed for 1 year. Okay, and I mean I know that I need the system for this 1 year. So which answer is more appropriate in this case? So 1 year reserved instances is correct, right? So you want to have the system run for next 1 year, and I want to save a lot of costs. So 1 year reserved instances will be a better option. So here, next question is, I want to go for running an EC2 instance, and my database team is asking for 8,000 IOPS. So by default, you won't get that level of IOPS in general purpose. So if there is a demand for more input output per second, then you should always go for EBS volume with provisioned IOPS option, so that you can provision the requirement from the customer. Okay, so you should go for EBS volume with provisioned IOPS. Okay, and the next question is, you have a compliance requirement that you should own the entire physical hardware. So in that case, you should go and get the dedicated host or the dedicated instance. Okay, so that way you can have a compliance requirement. Okay, now the next question is, you have created an EC2 instance and you want to connect to it. What should you log into the system for the first time? So you should always use the key pair combination. That is the answer. Okay, so you have to use the private key, public key combination to log in for the first time, and the subsequent time you can start using your username, password, and so on. So they are asking, what are the characteristics of the AMI that are backed by instance store? Instance store is local storage. So the instance store, okay, so let's see what are the answers here. So the data will be lost when the instance is shut down. Yeah, that is correct. The data persists when the instance is shut down. No, that is not correct. The data persists when the instance is terminated. Okay, so option is D actually. The data will be lost when the instance is shut down actually. Okay, so this is the answer. Okay, let's see. Okay, we'll see the other questions a little later. Okay, for now, okay, I'll stop the recording now. Okay, and then you can start practicing. Okay,